I thought I'd start by reading a little bit from this book, Thinking and Doing, which is translation of Kue that Moshe Feldenkrais did back in the 30s. And there's an excerpt in the foreword to this book that I keep coming back to again and again recently, and thought I'd share it here and begin the day this way. This foreword is written by Hugo Bergman in Jerusalem in 1930, and he says, any straining of the will that is in opposition to the imagined process will cause damage. This idea is in accord with Henry Louis Bergson's philosophy, which states that willpower and intelligence are merely superficial expressions of the mind, whereas their deeper manifestations are imagination and instinct. I drew this image recently with willpower and intelligence up here and imagination and instinct down in the belly. And I'm just appreciative of this because I feel like I thrive more when I come from imagination and instinct, and I get caught and stuck more when I'm coming from trying to use my willpower, trying hard to push something along. And so I'm invoking today to play with this, working with imagination and instinct as an intention to guide myself in this art making process. I should just say a little bit about my history with art making. Really began when I was a teenager, and it took me many years before I entered my bodily experience through Feldenkrais. And when I did that, when I entered into my body, I put art not totally away, but to the side a bit. And I did make a book over the course of 10 years, Feldenkrais Illustrated, but I spent many years devoted to attending to my bodily experience and that of others through Feldenkrais and authentic movement. And I've had this longing to bring art back into my life in a more regular way. Although I was sharing with somebody yesterday that I think that longing to bring art more in my life was actually always been there. Even when I was making art more regularly and more consistently, there's always this longing for more. And that I think maybe will never go away. So it feels good to attend to that longing, that pull, and give some space to it. So that's my intention today. So a little bit more from this paragraph. Educating the imagination is more important than educating the will. That feels super rich to me. I feel like the education I had both from my art teacher in high school, who really opened the doors of me following my impulses to make art, as well as the education of the Feldenkrais method and the training program where you're really asked to listen to your sensation and override even what the teacher's saying in service of listening to yourself. And also authentic movement practice is definitely a space of educating the imagination, and that is also connected to Carl Jung's work with active imagination, which I'm very much interested in, and this idea of playing with the unconscious, playing with unconscious material through creative process. And unconscious, not necessarily like deep, dark secrets, but just outside of your everyday self and the other aspects of your brain that you don't connect with, or other aspects of yourself that you don't connect with in the everyday, which are creative resources. And as my teacher Alton Wasson and Daphne Lowell, my teachers, talk about psychological narrative, that we can work with our own narratives through creative process, through movement. And I really appreciate that. And for me, it's very much a spiritual practice as well, this diving into my own material via creative embodied practices that continue to change and shift. Continuing on with this Hugo Bergman, he says, man fulfills in his life what his imagination directs him to do. And I think in order to follow our imagination, we need to make space for it. And again and again, I'm playing with creating space and have this intention and desire to create space for our imaginary processes, including my own. Each of us contains his life's image within himself. The course of our lives expresses and fulfills this image. I think that's super beautiful, that we work with. This is also dovetails into Feldenkrais's work with self-image. And what drew me so much to Feldenkrais is this idea that we act in accordance with our self-image, and that can change over time as we play with our attention, our awareness, and our bodily experience, and our creative process too, that self-image changes through our action and through our awareness of ourselves in action, in motion, in movement, in creativity. So I think I'll stop there and call this my first Facebook Live moment.